Hi there. Hi there, and welcome to News, which stands for News, Ews, Wz, and S. And here's some of that news. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has filed a lawsuit against Joe President Biden over his vaccine mandate for federal contractors. Upon announcing this, the government declared that tossing people aside is just not something we can tolerate here in the state of Florida, referring to the unvaccinated employees that would lose their jobs and not the 58,000 plus Florida residents who have died of the virus. That's weird. Maybe he meant to address the millions in Florida infected with coronavirus and got the words mixed up. You know, since that state has broken numerous records about how bad it's going there. But wait! It turns out that COVID numbers in the state are now the lowest in the country, clearly. The lamestream greedia will ignore this, as it terrifies us corona bros, who don't want anyone to know that you can beat COVID without masks or vaccines or shutdowns, or maybe it's that coronavirus has a 2-month cycle that scientists have been able to identify, and in fact the media flat out predicted this drop based on that, and it has nothing to do with Ron DeSantis. I don't know. One of those things must be true. Where was I? Blank page, blank page, blank page. Ah, here, blank page. We're talking about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Fuck, really? Do we have to do that? Can I just, talk about the virus some more? Or maybe something we haven't covered, boars. Boars! What, have we discussed boars? We already have 6 videos about the boars. Oh my god, this script is pre-written? What? Wait, I'm reading these words off a teleprompter and trying to, turn away as if I'm not? We're filming this?! Yep, we are. We talk a lot on this show about the GOP, the GOP, and Donald Trump and Matt Gaetz and how they're bad or hurting America or have very real allegations against them for aiding sex trafficking. And I guess this is one of those episodes. A sort of checking in on where the Trump-erect far-right politickers and polylickers stand a year after their sweaty beacon of hate got reluctantly shoved out of the White House. Because while we're not yet a full year into Biden's iron fist rule, wooden fist, felt fist, open-handed grope. Anyway, we are, as of last week, celebrating a year from the moment that President Donald Jackson Trump clapped his nubby mitts and forced the entire GOP to pretend like he didn't just lose an election. One of those extremely sad suck-ups being Ronald Dion DeSantis, who at the time floated the idea of taint-kicking democracy in exchange for another Trump term. Really embarrassing stuff and very disrespectful to taints. The bipartisan reach across the aisle of the groin. And so I wanted to start with this guy, Ron. Mainly because we haven't really talked about him much on the show, but boy, should probably do that. In fact, here's a quick bio in case you don't know anything about him. And when I say quick, I mean quick for this show and not actually quick. But anyway, Ron was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and spent his early years moving around to various places in the state. Little Ronnie was good at baseball, and in the 90s, his team even made it to the Little League World Series.
The Dunedin national team is going for it all. That coveted trip to the Little League World Series.
I'm Ron DeSantis. We were only 12, but we learned to dream big, work hard, and swing away. And that's my plan as governor. I'll grow high-paying jobs, restore Florida's water quality, and improve education for every child.
Ron DeSantis? No way is that how you pronounce your name. You're wrong about it, but I guess we'll go back and we'll film the first part of this episode again. Anyway, Ron DeSantis. He's so down to earth. Playing local baseball, supporting welders and fishing, playing outfield, in college, at Yale. Just common folk stuff. Anyway, after bumbling his way through college and graduating magna cum laude with a BA in history, DeSantis spent a year as a grade school history teacher at the Darlington School, oh, cute name, a private prep school in Georgia before attending Harvard Law School like a commoner might. But I jest. He was a teacher at least. That's gotta give him some grounded perspective, right? No? Not at all? The point is, Ron DeSantis attended several of the most prestigious universities America has to offer, and really did come out of them with flying colors. In an article published in March, Politico writer Michael Cruz says that DeSantis's Yale baseball coach remembers being taken aback by his pristine transcript. In the same article, a senior DeSantis official describes him as a fucking computer. Not a computer that fucks, but a fucking computer. DeSantis isn't your bog-standard idiot conservative stereotype the libs would love him to be. He is, by all accounts, an intelligent, calculating, diligent politician who is highly educated and knows what he's doing. And presently, what he's doing is taking a very loud stance against vaccines. After Harvard Law, DeSantis joined the Navy and was initially stationed at Naval Station Mayport in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, the details surrounding DeSantis' time in the armed forces are a little hazy, in large part because the federal government either wouldn't release or redacted certain information, because of all the hush-hush robot f***ing, probably, is my guess. Still, from the information we do have, we know that Ronnie spent time working at Guantanamo Bay as an administrative officer, whatever that means, probably something very bad, and that he was deployed to Iraq as a part of a SEAL team. In 2012, after being honorably discharged, gross, from active duty, duty, double gross, just 2 years earlier, DeSantis decided to run for Congress, winning the Republican primary with 39% of the vote before going on to win 57-43 against the Democratic nominee Heather Bevin. So, it's here that Ronnie's career really begins to pick up steam. Whoop, whoop, steam engine DeSantis. After winning Florida's 6th congressional district against Bevin, or Bevan, I didn't look it up, DeSantis, I don't trust him about it, began to make a name for himself by introducing legislation designed to target President Barack Obama's failure to enforce the law, by which, of course, he meant Obama's 2011 decision to delay deportation proceedings against non-criminal illegal immigrants. One of the good things the president did. But this is, of course, what you would expect from the GOP during that time. It's only in 2016 that things finally kick into high gear because, as those of you with excellent memories may recall, it was in 2016 that recently not reinstated President Donald J. Trump was elected to the White House, and boy, oh boy, did Ronnie decide to hitch his cart to that horse and ride it as far as it would go. Up to that point, Ronnie, like most other Republicans, had carefully avoided being tied to the candidate everyone thought was a, joke. Even going so far as to disavow Trump's tweeted endorsement of him from 2012, albeit in a kind of Weasley, indirect politician-y way. But after a brief run at the Senate that ended as soon as Marco Rubio decided to seek re-election, it was all aboard the Trump train, woot woot, the Trump horse and cart. I'm sorry, I'm getting my transportation metaphors mixed up. The Trump-Elon Musk Hyperloop! Ha! There we go. What I'm describing here reflects a key subset of GOP ghouls that only became major names once Trump took office, and they come from two separate generations. The first being the likes of DeSantis and Chris Christie and Ted Cruz, who got their start during Obama's presidency and had to shift course once 2016 hit. The second being the newer group seemingly birthed from Trump's popularity and success. They both have some crucial things in common, but it sure seems like the latter group is way more fascinating. Most of them came from a place of entitlement, ran completely on culture war and conspiracy theories, and appear to be riddled with absolutely unreal scandals. The flagship of this toxic bunch has to be Matt Gaetz, walking Dick Tracy villain, an absolute sex criminal. Matthew Louis Gaetz II, real full name, got his start as the son of local politician in Florida, Don Gaetz, before going to law school and passing the bar and then not paying bar fees, and then, in 2010, ran as state representative in Florida's 4th District. Matthew raised 5 times more than any of his rivals, much of which from donors who had given to his father, along with $100,000 of his own money, or rather, his father's own money. As this article points out, his salary at the time couldn't possibly account for that kind of cash. He was, scientifically speaking, a fancy little daddy's boy. And from 2010 to 2016, Matthew generally stayed off the radar, running unopposed for several elections and out of the news, with the exception of sporadic acts of casual evil. Some accomplishments achieved during this time was removing requirements for ethanol and gas, ethanol being the thing that makes gas burn cleaner and explode less. He also passionately opposed a bill cracking down on revenge porn. Weird, I wonder why that is. And also sponsored and passed a bill designed to speed up executions of death row inmates. Imagine going into politics and deciding that the big issue to tackle was making sure prisoners died faster. So, of course, he thrived under his new daddy Trump. Then, of course, there's Marjorie Taylor Green, who, like her buddy Matthew Louis Gaetz II, got her start with a successful father. She inherited a family construction company called Taylor Commercial, where she was listed as CEO from 2007 to 2011. An investigation by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution found that during this time, Marjorie had little to no actual involvement in the company. Then she did, CrossFit for a while, and that probably would have been the end of it, had Donald Trump not run for president. According to her own words, Marjorie got interested in politics during the 2016 primaries, where she began to write about, very unreasonable conspiracy theories on a since-closed tabernacle of horseshit website called American Truth Seekers. There's a million articles about her online presence during this time and the parade of unbelievable conspiracies she has subscribed to, including but not limited to her belief that Hillary Clinton engaged in satanic sacrifices and, of course, the whole Jewish space laser stuff. She is, in short, one of a sea of QAnon cultists you saw infecting the internet during this time. The only exception being that, like Gaetz, she happened to have the financial resources to run for office. And boy, did she. While first entering the 6th District GOP race in Georgia, Marjorie actually jumped over to the 14th District where she could run unopposed. As part of her campaign, she actually had to move to that district. After that, she took a very big swing, diving headfirst into all of the mask-off QAnon toxicity and running as a full-throated pro-Trump candidate right when the iron was hot, getting a barrage of endorsements from the loser president himself. Ooh, let's watch.
Somebody that gets a little more publicity than I do, Marjorie Taylor Green, right here from Northwest Georgia. Oh boy, I don't want to mess with her. No, she's great. Every one of them has my full and complete endorsement. Go out and vote for them and let them all come into Congress, right?
Winning words from a loser guy. But it wasn't just kind words that Trump gave her. Don't be gross! You see, this was all happening around the same time as the, COVID pandemic. All right. Remember all those PPP loans that went out from our government at the time of the pandemic? Well, it turns out that one such loan of between $150,000 and $350,000 went to a company called Taylor Commercial. The one that Marjorie Taylor Greene's family owned, that coincidentally, Marjorie's name was added back to the registration of in 2019. 2 months after this loan, she would donate $450,000 to her own campaign. As an aside, Taylor Commercial would manage to save an entire 12 jobs with their PPP loan, or rather, expected to save. No official word on that. So yeah, holy fucking shit. Marjorie, having been propped up by hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars and her own father's money, would continue to double down throughout her general election, going far beyond dog whistling and into dog screaming? Don't scream at dogs. They love you. By opting to, one could argue, threaten to shoot AOC and her squad. She rode that Trump worm across the dunes of racism and won by a fucking landslide, all thanks to 229,827 Georgians deciding that this deeply caustic individual would be allowed a national podium. It's actually quite amazing when you stand back from it. Hopefully, Trump was a very brief phenomenon that a lot of people rode the coattails of, the consequence of that possibly lasting longer than him. He's like the Twilight films in a lot of ways, with folks like Taylor Green and Matt Gaetz being the subsequent 50 Shades fanfiction turned box office smash amongst the sex-repressed. Or, more relevant to kids today, it's like the film Multiplicity, where Michael Keaton makes a copy of himself, and then that copy makes a copy and makes a copy, and so on. Why am I explaining the plot? You all know this. America is in love with the film Multiplicity. And speaking of stuff we love, it's time to take an ad break. Oh, good! I'll be here the whole time just thinking about Michael Keaton and maybe some other stuff, but probably not. Woo! Let me tell you, being a kid is exhausting. I don't know if you've tried it, but I have, so you can trust me on this. School can be a drag, super boring, and unfortunately often outdated in some key areas of a child's education. For example, STEM. But fear not, parent and or guardian, because there's ID Tech, a STEM educator designed to fill learning gaps and explore topics not traditionally covered in school, all while maintaining a focus on having fun. And right now, ID Tech is offering your kids a deal to save $150 on weekly small group semesters or get started on a one-on-one tutoring lesson for just $49. ID Tech teaches courses in coding, design, game development, and even robotics. Their curriculum is developed developed in partnership with top universities like MIT and tech icons like Roblox and Minecraft. Cody loves Minecraft. Can Cody take classes, or would that be weird? I just want to play I'll just play Minecraft later, it's fine. Right now, you can go to idtech.com/more news right now and use code more news to save $150 on weekly small group semesters. For a limited time, you can also get started with a one-on-one tutoring lesson for just $49. That's code more news at idtech.com/more news to save $150. And your child can start learning online from a live instructor right now. idtech.com/more news. Give your kid a fun-jucation or an edu-function, depending on your religion or region.
Hey, you, psst, over here. Are you a small business owner? Perhaps you run a supernatural tournament that picks Earth's best fighters to battle for the fate of mankind. Perhaps you need to send out a bunch of cryptic, wax-sealed letters informing these fighters of their selection into your tournament. Or maybe you just do craft stuff online. I don't know your life, but if any of this applies to you, you should definitely check out Stamps.com. It is a service that lets you skip a trip to the post office by letting you compare rates, print labels, and access exclusive discounts all year long. Now, don't get me wrong, the post office is great if you're just sending off a few cryptic wax-sealed letters to like a handful of friends for a local ninja tournament or something like that, but Stamps.com is the ideal destination for anyone who regularly sends out postage and wants to save both time and money. It is a total lifesaver for anyone who spends more than a few minutes a week dealing with mail and shipping. And right now, you can sign up with promo code MORENEWS to get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, free postage, and a digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts, no sir. Just go to Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page, and enter code more news. The fate of the Earth realm depends on it. Code more news, not cord more news. Keep it all in.
Hey, look! We're back! And we were talking about all the pro-Trump up-and-comers on the right. We love comers.
Rick Perry, watch him. He's a comer.
Hell yeah. And I wanted to go all the way back to Ron DeSantis, an establishment Republican trying to make it in a MAGA world. As Trump's deputy campaign manager, David Bossie, put it, I put Ron DeSantis in the same category of defenders, both defending the president and being somebody who works best on offense to help forward the president's agenda. This isn't, like, scandalous, and it's a common exchange relationship between politicians and a president, and during this time, it proved to be an extremely smart move. Like, say what you will about all these caustic wads, they are definitely calculating, and we should not underestimate them. But unlike most presidents, there's a certain point of no return here that I think is interesting. Courting Trump's base wasn't something you could do non-committally, but rather a very hard line you'd have to cross.
Everyone knows my husband, Ron DeSantis, is endorsed by President Trump, but he's also an amazing dad. Ron loves playing with the kids.
Build the wall.
He reads stories.
Then Mr. Trump said, "You're fired." I love that part.
He's teaching Madison to talk.
Make America great again.
People say Ron's all Trump, but he is so much more.
Big league. So good.
I just thought you should know.
Ron DeSantis for governor.
Extremely embarrassing. That's not like an SNL sketch, but an actual campaign ad Ron did in 2018. According to his close friend Kent Sturman, DeSantis figured out what made the president notice people, and he did those things. And I guess the key word there is did, as in Ron DeSantis would fully embrace the Trump way of doing things, all the way down to the racist dog whistling.
The last thing we need to do is to monkey this up by trying to embrace a socialist agenda with huge tax increases and bankrupting the state.
That's Ron talking about Andrew Gillum, the black man he was running against, which read to many as pretty f***ing ghoulish given this country's long history of comparing African Americans to monkeys. Yes, that one is by cancel culture martyr Dr. Seuss. Damn that cancel culture, and damn the weird pronunciation of your name, Doctor! DeSantis, of course, later claimed that the statement had nothing to do with race, but like, who casually uses the term monkey this up? Even in that clip, it sounds like he forced it into his speech deliberately, which of course is how a dog whistle works. But benefit of the doubt. Maybe he just uses and likes the phrase, maybe he was referring to Air Bud Entertainment's 2016 hit, Monkey Up. Either way, Ron would win this election and seek out issues that would also cater to the Trump crowd, casting aside actual problems in his state in exchange for solving pretend ones that further this bizarre culture war Trumpist bullshit. At one point, he signed a bill banning sanctuary policies, despite no sanctuary cities actually existing in Florida before the law's enactment. Just weird performative stuff. You can compare this, of course, to his Senate counterpart Marco Rubio's vague anti-wokeness bill, because obviously the pressing issue facing Florida, a state with rising homelessness and poverty and a failing infrastructure, are rainbow flag logos and diverse superheroes. Great job, Marco. Truly a man of the working class. And while I wish I could say that this type of extremely embarrassing pandering doesn't work with their base, well, I can't.
When you look at the Brandon administration in terms of what they're doing.
Oh my god, you guys, just say f*** Joe Biden. You can just say that. It's not illegal or anything. F*** him. F*** Joe Biden. F*** him. See, the common thing across the board here is that all of these people base their political careers on being extremely reactive. It's not about governing the people, but maintaining an opposition to the left. You can see this with DeSantis and Ted Cruz's Obama years, most of their actions simply being to repeal stuff the president was doing. This was positively vital to their careers, as evidenced by the time Chris Christie dared to credit Obama for his swift response during Hurricane Sandy and became a fucking pariah in his own party. You could, I guess, argue that we'd see the same reaction if a Democrat praised Trump, except the opposition to Obama wasn't like on moral grounds. With Obama, the right wasn't mad at human rights abuses or drone striking civilians. They just didn't like him and opposed him across the board. Marxist Obama! They stonewalled him out of spite, and it worked really well. And after they all accepted Trump as the new frontman for the GOP, we saw another shift. Republican politicians who knew that, at some point, Trump would no longer be the president, and could move in to fill his shoes. That meant not focusing on actual policy, but rather attempting to harness the cult-like base he collected with broad talking points. The culture war, anti-wokeness stuff. And the reason I keep going back to DeSantis is that, as it stands right now, he is the only conservative politician who Trump's base will consider for a possible presidential pick. In polls that specifically ask who voters will go for, in the event that Trump doesn't run, 22% said they would pick Ron DeSantis, although they probably thought they were saying Ron DeSantis. Compare that with any of the other names, none of which even broke double digits, with the exception of one candidate, a Mr. Unsure. Sounds mysterious. I like him. Okay, so those are very bad numbers across the board. And what it actually means is that post-Trump, this base actually has no idea who they'd go for, DeSantis being the only one they are remotely interested in. And I'm sure that will even change. You know, after all, we're only a year past the election, and the running theory is that Trump will run again in 2024. He is certainly teasing it. You know, just the tip and such. Gross! But what if he doesn't run? It's not hard to imagine that he doesn't actually want to. Also, he's like pretty old. I mean, not Biden old, but in Trump years, he's like fucking 100. Dude does not take care of himself. For all we know, he's already been dead for years and is being piloted by a rat. Or, oh, maybe he keeps getting cloned like in the hit movie Multiplicity. And pondering this, I'm reminded of the first Iron Man film, which I know is a little on the obscure side, but I'm thinking about the idea that after Tony Stark and the Avengers formed as a team, that formation was a signal to the universe that Earth was a major player and invited a lot more attention. But in the case of Trump, it's not talking trees and mad titans and shit like that, but fascist weirdos and grifters. I mean, maybe Groot actually has a lot of authoritarian beliefs. I don't know. He's definitely got that right-wing individual thing going on with I am Groot, but that could be a coincidence. I'm losing the thread here. Come back. Got it. All right. We've discussed it many, many, many times on this show already. That Trumpism might more accurately be described as the early stages of an American fascism, a palingenetic ultranationalist ideology that promotes cultural anxieties around sexuality and gender, cultivates an us versus them mentality, often centered on ethnic or racial lines, and encourages anti-intellectualism through propaganda and denial of reality. Fascist parties often coalesce around a single, charismatic strongman who becomes the all-powerful leader of the party. Because of this, fascist movements often go hand in hand with centralizing styles of government, like totalitarianism.
I alone can fix it.
In her book, The Origins of Totalitarianism, political theorist Hannah Arendt describes what she calls the masses, individuals who live on the periphery of society and who may have lost their former social identity and emotional bearings as a result of some abrupt political, geopolitical, or economic dislocation. She says, quote, "The term masses applies only where we deal with people who either because of sheer numbers or indifference or a combination of both cannot be integrated into any organization based on common interest, into political parties or municipal governments or professional organizations or trade unions." Put more simply, Arendt's masses don't fall along traditional political or class lines, which exist because they share some common interest or political goal. Rather, the masses are composed of people who feel disenfranchised by mainstream politics, who don't cleanly fit into one economic class or income level. Equally importantly, the masses become mobilized when their way of life is drastically impacted by, say, an economic crash, or a climate crisis, or the continued disappearance of manufacturing and other blue-collar jobs at the hands of automation and the gig economy. A big, drastic change, like if some big monster just snapped their fingers and made everyone clones? Something about multiplicity, you get it. These people, Arendt says, who are traditionally indifferent to politics, provide a totally fresh pool of supporters for totalitarian leaders to draw from. Then, once mobilized, the masses turn against the established system and its government, since in their eyes the system never actually did anything for them. And for a lot of people, fair enough. This is perfect for the totalitarian leader, who uses the masses' fury to tear down the established democratic systems of government and replace them with their own system of authoritarian control. Trump's administration wasn't actually totalitarian. After all, he lost. For all his efforts to undermine the legitimacy of our elections and cast doubt on long-standing systems of government, our democratic institutions are still standing, for better or for worse. But it feels clear that Trump's appeal, his rhetorical style and strategy, were all centered around appealing to a base of supporters who absolutely fit Arendt's definition of the masses: angry, marginalized people who don't trust the system but do completely trust their fearless leader. The problem we're now seeing is that, well, Trump isn't the president, and maybe won't ever be again. And I want to talk about what happens when people try to fill that gap. But first, we have more ads for you. Don't move. The ads can't see you if you don't move. Hello world, it's your pal Cody. You know what I love? Telling people to mind their own freaking business. Especially if those people are corporations. They get those sticky fingies, you know? Always trying to get our data or information. You wouldn't let the general manager of some big box store break into your house and rummage through your stuff, right? That would be weird! And yet, every time we go online, even in incognito mode, internet service providers are allowed to see every single website we visit and sell our data to ad companies without our permission. That's why I use ExpressVPN, an app designed to reroute your internet connection so ISPs can't get their digital digits all up on your browsing information. ExpressVPN is available on all of your devices, keeps your information safe and secure, and runs seamlessly in the background so you don't even have to think about it. It will encrypt 100% of your data with the most powerful encryption available. So why not protect your data with the VPN rated #1 by CNET? And right now, you can get 3 months free on a 1-year package by visiting expressvpn.com/some news. That's expressvpn.com/some news. expressvpn.com/some news to learn more. Stop giving away your data and stick it to the man and or lady. Not sexually. Stick it to him. Give him the old what for.
You know, pal, talking about the news can get pretty darn tiring. As you can imagine, I've developed a bit of a relationship with coffee. Call it a friendship or ritualistic pact. And I'm guessing you or someone standing right behind you now probably loves coffee too. Maybe they go to bed every night excited to wake up and have that first cup. Maybe you can't see them standing behind you, but I assure you they are there. And so I want to tell them, not you, about Trade, a coffee delivery service that will bring you the best coffee right to your front door. You can go on their website and take their coffee quiz designed to match you with the best possible choice to fit your taste. They have over 400 craft coffees to pick from and will send you a freshly roasted bag as often as you'd like. You can give them feedback in real time so that their coffee matches evolve as your taste does. And in fact, they are so sure that you'll love your first match that if you don't like it, they'll even replace it for free. Did I mention that they partner with over 55 small US-based roasters who are committed to ethical and sustainable sourcing? Pretty important. And for our listeners and watchers and people watching behind other people right now, Trade is offering your first bag free and $5 off your bundle at checkout. To get yours, go to drinktrade.com/more news and use promo code more news. Take the quiz to start your journey to the perfect cup. That is drinktrade.com/more news, promo code more news for your first bag free and $5 off your bundle. Coffee! Coffee!
Oh, hi, hello, howdy. That's the last ad. So as we were saying, Trump isn't, the president anymore. And the problem we're seeing is that none of the Republicans attempting to follow in Trump's footsteps seem to have his je ne sais quoi. Whether because their supporters keep dying of COVID, they're fielding allegations of sex trafficking, or just because they're just a weird, unlikable little dude. In other words, Donald Trump, for some reason, had a charm to him that these other people just can't duplicate. He was, for all of his many, 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 many faults, really good at coming off as natural and likable to his base. These turds, on the other hand, not so much. In part, I'm sure, because everything they're doing is a pale imitation rather than a new freshness. A copy of a copy of a copy. For example.
I'm Michelle Fiore, and I'm running for governor. I spent my whole life fighting the establishment. I was the first female majority leader in the Nevada Assembly and one of the first electeds to endorse Donald J. Trump. And you better believe I was attacked for it. Washington Post called me a gun-toting calendar girl, and Politico magazine said I was the Lady Trump, and I don't care. We need outsiders, fighters, not the same old boring, moderate, compromise, blue blazer politicians. Let's start with a 3-shot plan. Ban vaccine mandates, ban critical race theory, and stop voter fraud. The Joe Biden administration is coming after me. I'm Michelle Fiore, and I'm ready for the fight.
Did she drive all the way to the desert just to shoot 3 bottles? Why are they full? You're supposed to drink them first, then shoot them, and then shoot, more stuff? You had a perfectly good TV to shoot. It was right there. This ad by Michelle Fiore for governor is like several metaphors on top of each other. The first being that these ghouls often think of guns as political props while not seeming actually that enthusiastic about firing them. It's weird to think that anyone could see someone trying so transparently hard to be the next Trump and actually think that they were a viable candidate. Even if I was a pro-Trump, gun-loving, anti-mask country boy Cody, images like this would seem insultingly pandering. She's even doing her own campaign fraud scam, and come on, lady, play an original song, big deal. Trump also assaulted women. Give us something new. For a lot of these lower-level people trying to get the Trump vote, there's definitely a large intersection in the Venn diagram of calculating politicians and people who are in need of a serious intervention. I'm not being flippant here. A lot of these folks have a real history of assaults or threats or intense interest in conspiracy theories. And as the GOP moves away from Trump, you're gonna see a lot more true believers instead of opportunists. And they all seem to have a few things in common. The key one being that they have some amount of resources giving them the ability to launch an effective campaign. They're often wealthy, with a background in business, or in some cases simply inherited their wealth. And on top of that, they seem to be extremely lacking in empathy. These two come to mind. Remember them? The one on the right is Mark McCloskey, a wealthy personal injury lawyer who, as you might have guessed, is running for Senate as we speak. This is after Roy Blunt announced he will not seek re-election, continuing a pattern where older establishment Republicans are leaving and being replaced by this MAGA-era group. Gee, would probably be good for Democrats if more Democrats retired, huh? Whatever. Anyway, best of luck to Mark McCloskey, guy who likes pointing guns at protesters, who also thinks that 13-year-old rape and incest victims shouldn't be allowed abortions. There's also Amanda Chase, a member of the Virginia Senate who is currently running for governor. Amanda holds the honor of being the first Virginia state senator since the 80s to be censured, both the GOP and Dems voting against her after she posted a bunch of wild horse shit about the Capitol rioters being both patriots, but also secretly Antifa. Which is it? It can't be both, you know. She also took a hard stance against the Derek Chauvin guilty verdict, despite even a lot of the right agreeing with that outcome. She calls herself Trump in heels, and part of her greatest hits include wearing a gun to the Senate floor and berating a Capitol police officer for not letting her park in a secure area. Like, that second thing isn't even a political gray area, she just legally couldn't park there. When she announced her campaign, one of the men cheerfully standing behind her would go on to be arrested with a bunch of handguns with plans to attack a Pennsylvania vote counting site. And yet, none of that is quite as chilling as this next video of her I'm about to show you.
Everybody sing M-A-G-A.
Terrifying stuff. Again, not being flippant when I call these people not completely well. I'm being flippant about that last video, but not the other stuff, okay? They have very real histories of violence and sure seem like they could potentially hurt somebody or enable people to hurt other people, and they pose a really big problem for the establishment GOP or anyone pivoting away from Trump. Because while we're, fingies crossed, not likely to see any of them in the White House anytime soon, people like Amanda Chase and Marjorie Taylor Green and Lauren Boebert all represent the GOP's current grassroots side. The only reassurance we have right now is that all of these people, so far, just don't seem to have the national charisma that Trump bafflingly obtained. Probably the funniest example, however, are the non-true believers, otherwise known as opportunists or grifters. J.D. Vance springs to mind. He's the writer of an autobiographical book called Hillbilly Elegy, which you might know as an extremely bad movie starring Amy Adams and Glenn Close. Not just because the movie is bad, which it is, but also because it's based around an extremely average American childhood, being propped up as some kind of unique hardship.
Things could get tough down in Jackson in a heartbeat. But Mama and Papa taught me that you never start a fight.
Must have been so hard for you, getting dunked underwater for 15 seconds like that. Look, I'm not saying bullying is fun or good, but rather that this movie is filled with moments like this. Real bumper bowling problems that most middle-class white guys experience at some point, being painted as a harrowing tale of overcoming adversity. All packaged in a morality piece glorifying the right-wing fantasy of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm not trying to knock this guy's extremely average life. Like, everyone has it hard at some point, but perhaps that doesn't always make a compelling film. But it should be noted that JD got into Yale in big part to their financial aid package, and is now running as a Republican for Senate and works for Peter Thiel, a guy who wants to pay people to not go to college.
The professors are the enemy.
If you dare to watch this film or read his book, you'll realize that Vance learned all the wrong lessons from his childhood, seeming to conclude that people in poverty are there because it's mostly their fault. Like, the film ends with him deciding to not support his addict mother, and that's like a victory. Because people they just gotta take some personal responsibility. get into Yale, run for Congress, and have Peter Thiel donate $10 million to their campaign, followed by an undisclosed donation by hedge fund manager Robert Mercer. Bing, bang, boom. Bootstraps accomplished. And that's why I wanted to talk about Hillbilly Elegy, because this story and everything that Vance does really reeks of someone who just wants to get in the spotlight. For example, when Trump first ran in 2016, JD expressed a very loud dislike of him as a candidate. And I mean, like, he super didn't like him, at one point calling him reprehensible. Then, the moment he wanted to get into politics, he completely reversed his stance on Trump because of course he did. Like a beta cancel cultured snowflake apologizing to the woke mob. And since then, he's been filling Twitter with some of the worst right-wing hot takes, towing that line of toxicity to get the attention of the MAGA crowd. Like, wow, look at this shit. If only there was a word you could use to describe it. You might also notice that I'm not really describing what JD Vance's policies would be. And that's because I'm pretty sure they're just whatever Peter Thiel wants. And this dude is part of a pattern of these empty vessels now attempted to run on Trump fumes. Along with Vance, there's also Blake Masters, another law school honky who is currently running for Senate in Arizona under the starting premise that having political experience is overrated. That sounds familiar, interesting. But let's hear what he has to say.
Because we are up against a media that lies to us, schools that teach our kids to hate our country, and corporations that have gotten so big, they think they're bigger than America. It's time to put this country first. We need to enforce the law, and we need to finish the wall.
Oh, okay, so just like all the Trump stuff. He's trying to do Trump stuff in a really obvious, desperate way. Blake, his name is Blake, let's not just breeze past that, but Blake has actually claimed that he's not trying to pander to Trump like some of the other candidates, adding, and this is hilarious, the president is way smarter than that. Of course I'm not trying to get your favor, my lord. Thou is far too intellectual and sexily besuited for such clownish behavior. Again, just really transparent and funny. And much like JD Vance, it's really hard to know what Blake Speedster actually intends to do for America beyond repeat a lot of talking points. Here's one he's particularly fond of.
In America, you ought to be able to raise a family on one single income. We used to be able to do this. Something happened, globalization, decades of inflation. Can't really do it anymore. I think that's a huge problem. So why don't politicians talk about it? And the left, they attack me. They want to say, oh, Blake, that's sexist. But guys, there's nothing sexist about prosperity.
First of all, who is saying that's sexist? Like a person on Twitter, maybe? I get if you specify that one specific gender should stay home, it would be sexist. But the idea that all jobs should pay well enough and have enough benefits to support an entire household is very much something the left actually wants. Literally, Elizabeth Warren wrote a book on it. But two of all, interestingly enough, Blake Thunder doesn't ever specify what he thinks should be done to accomplish that. It's not in this ad or on his website. And maybe that's because this right-leaning candidate would have to come up with solutions that perhaps his party wouldn't be so keen on. You know, like raising the minimum wage and ensuring free healthcare for everyone so as to not tie the ability to see a doctor to your job, paid leave, things like that. It's just funny how he honed in on a very real problem and then seems unable to reach the natural conclusion to that problem. As if he knows he needs to appeal to Americans, but isn't actually interested in helping them. Man, who is funding this guy? Peter Thiel? Oh, that's actually the answer. Can you guess how much he gave him? It was $10 million? You don't have to guess. This was all planned. I'm not talking to anybody. So yeah, opportunists. Blake Cunnilingus and JD Vag Eater, two compliments to them if they apply to them, don't believe in much of anything. They like money, fame, power, and see the MAGA crowd as a very easy grift. It seems. Maybe they really do believe in both helping people and Peter Thiel's vision of some like neo-feudalist tech militia startup where he injects young people's blood into him to stay alive forever. I don't know. But it seems like they won't help anyone beyond ensuring that if you slip through the cracks of society, it's simply because you didn't work hard enough, and that the very wealthy can continue to be very wealthy. And even then, it's really just one person that is wealthy. It's their base, Peter Thiel. And sadly, They might win their elections, but it's really hard to see either of them make it all the way to the White House. But I don't know, weirder things have happened, huh? So again, what if Trump doesn't run? Where will the GOP and his base find themselves? This dilemma has left a gap for the GOP open for one of two possibilities. The first is what we're talking about, that in 2024 the Republicans field a presidential candidate who is like Trump but possibly smarter, someone who can effectively appeal to the Trump base, possibly even one of the people we talked about, or way worse. After all, Trump wasn't a politician but a TV personality, paving the way to some of the darkest of timelines. There are loads of people who are actively trying to do this. But the second, and equally bad option, is that they don't find anybody, and the Republicans completely lose control over their base. We're already seeing this with Amanda Chase, who after her bipartisan censure has been flip-flopping between the Republican and independent parties. Aaron spends a long time talking about what happens to the masses when totalitarianism collapses. And she says that, contrary to what you might expect, the masses pretty much keeping on. This is because they're loyal not actually to the individual leader or to any particular goal, but to the fictional reality the leader has created for them. A world of conspiracy, of black and white morals, where everyone is out to get them, and only the charismatic leader can speak the truth. Once the leader is gone, they either revert back to their previous state of apathy, ceasing to believe in the dogma for which yesterday they still were ready to sacrifice their lives, or they find a new function, a new cause to throw themselves behind and support just as vigorously and stupidly as the initial one. Back to brunch, or on to Lackfist! The repercussions of this are most easily seen with COVID. While Trump was in office, he downplayed the virus and undermined the necessity of masks and of the vaccines, and now Republican voters are dying left, right, and center because they were convinced not to get the vax, and now nobody in the Republican Party has any ability to control them. Not even Trump. Breitbart, bastion of respectable journalism, has pivoted to arguing that actually, the anti-vax movement was a Democratic psyop all along as a part of a bid to kill Republicans in a desperate attempt to get their readers to stop dying from an easily preventable virus. In Florida, DeSantis' approval ratings have dropped as Florida's COVID numbers have gone up, in large part because the people who like DeSantis keep dying of the coronavirus, and the people who aren't dying don't like that the governor of their state seems to be okay with people dying of the coronavirus. And as a pandemic rages across the globe, income inequality in America continues to spike, and total climate catastrophe grows nearer and nearer. More and more people are realizing that the status quo is not equipped to fix these problems. Fascists and totalitarians prey on these feelings, on disenchantment with the establishment and resentment of the people in power, to amass support for their undemocratic political movements. Because it's easier, you see, to ignore the complicated solutions to these issues in exchange for glomming to one larger-than-life figure. The question right now is who that figure will be for the GOP, because that's simply the direction things are heading. And whoever that person is needs to both toe the political line between the establishment Republicans and up-and-coming MAGA folk, while not just seeming like a bad Trump impersonation. And I don't know, maybe that person just isn't in the spotlight right now, but might be very soon.
The politicians pick American against American. Rich versus poor, black versus white, urban versus rural. I don't believe in that garbage. It's a lie. I'm a conservative, not because someone told me to be. I'm a conservative because I believe in smaller government, a strong military, personal responsibility, and making sure all people have the opportunity to pursue their dreams. That's an America worth fighting for. My name is Herschel Walker, and I'm running for the United States Senate. I'm a kid from a small town in Georgia who's lived the American dream, and I'm ready to fight to keep that dream alive for you too.
Look, I don't like to make a lot of non-bore predictions here at Cody's Shody, but Herschel Walker ticks so many boxes for the GOP. He's a retired football player who went on to start his own business. He's soft-spoken and charismatic, and most importantly, a very good friend of Donald Trump.
One time, I planned to take his kids to Disney World with my family. At the last minute, Donald said he'd like to join us. So there he was, in a business suit, on It's a Small World ride. That was something to see.
It just shows you what a caring, loving father he is. It hurt my soul to hear the terrible names that people call Donald. The worst one is racist. I take it as a personal insult that people would think I've had a 37-year friendship with a racist.
That is honestly the most humanizing story anyone's ever told about our terrible former and definitely racist president. So of course, Walker has Trump's full endorsement, which in turn gave him the endorsement of all his low-level enforcers like Marjorie Taylor Green, and as a result, the reluctant endorsement of the establishment GOP, who initially were hesitant with Walker mainly because no one really knows where he stands on a lot of issues. Also maybe because he once held a straight razor to his wife's throat and then choked her until she passed out. That seems, like a hit against him, actually. It should be noted, however, that Walker doesn't dispute this and says he's been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder and uses this and other stories to raise awareness about mental illness in this country. While that story is objectively horrifying, it could actually pose as a strength for his campaign and give him a perspective of empathy a lot of these other people are severely lacking in. It can start an actual conversation about mental health in this country, and it really helps that Walker is confronting this instead of being proud of it, like some of the other acts of violence other candidates we've talked about have. Also, his son is an LGBTQ pro-Trump TikTok star, and it sure seems like Walker is supportive of that community. I'm not trying to sell this guy to you as someone to get behind, because obviously, but rather point out that if elected, Herschel Walker really seems like someone who could make it far in this new MAGA climate. He's Trump-aligned, but not an exact copy, supported by the GOP across the board while promising to return us to base conservative values. And most importantly, a total blank slate when it comes to the actual issues. Anyone can look at him and think, I bet he agrees with me about all the things that I believe, because he hasn't actually told us shit. You could see him as both a dangerous or refreshing direction for the GOP. The ideal populist figure for a post-Trump, post-COVID country that will be searching desperately for answers.
He's been an Olympian. He's a Heisman Trophy. He's in the College Hall of Fame. He has all these accolades. However, when you're with him, he will make you feel you are the most important person in the room. He is a small-town guy who lifts people up instead of bringing them down. He's always said that the United States is the greatest country in the world. His story has not changed. I think Herschel Walker would make a great leader. He's humble, he's honest, he's sincere. He's always stood for the right things. Herschel Walker wants what's best for his home state, and he wants best for the United States of America.
For Mayor Pete's sake, his slogan is Save America! Now, to be fair, and balanced, obviously, far-right conservatives are not the only people recognizing these feelings and appealing to a previously untapped voter base. Left-wing politicians like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez also made their names by branding themselves as independent rebels outside of the system, ready to take down the man, and they did it. Great job. This is because, contrary to what nuancekillertwitter.com might tell you, appealing to economic populism is not a purely left or right-wing political strategy, but rather merely the politics of everyday people feeling frustrated with or antagonistic toward those in power. Actually doing something about it, though, is not something the right is interested in. Those grifters like Blake Fart realized this with the whole one job should support a household talk. He's honing in on a pressure point like a pickup artist negging a woman's teeth or some shit and then promising to fix it. But of course, he doesn't actually want to fix it. Nor does Marjorie Taylor Green or Ron DeSantis for that matter. They're all variations of the same thing, even if they don't know it. They see a country that's deeply hurt and want to harness the frustration and anger as opposed to healing it. And that's why the ultimate solution is to create an environment where people like this can't thrive. You know, by actually fixing those problems. Improve the material conditions of those less fortunate voters by systemically restructuring the way we allocate resources to those in need, through like tax policy and pro-labor legislation, or something like that, because it sure feels like America is headed towards rock bottom. And that's exactly the kind of place where you either find salvation and strength, or go live in a yurt and give all your money to a dude from SoCal named Swami Chip who promises to clone you like in that bitchin' movie you love, but instead just steals a bunch of your sperm. Fucking Chip! So perhaps that's something the Democrats need to think about. What they shouldn't do, however, is the exact mirror opposite of what these candidates are doing, which is to focus on Donald Trump.
I'm Terry McAuliffe, candidate for governor, and I sponsored this ad.
What kind of governor would Glenn Youngkin be?
President Trump represents so much of why I'm running.
And like Donald Trump, Glenn Youngkin refuses to take coronavirus seriously.
Sweet dirty balls! Democrats are terminally obsessed with the idea that Donald Trump's endorsement is some kind of death touch for their opponent. The reality, at least in a place like Virginia, is completely the opposite. I know this might sound like Monday morning quarterbacking, since Terry McAuliffe already super lost the Virginia governor's race, but there's nothing that shows how out of touch the Democrats are than assuming everyone under them hates Trump like they do. And for the Democratic Party of Virginia to have put out this mailer linking Trump to McAuliffe's opponent Glenn Youngkin really seems like they were just doing his work for him. Like, did the Democrats actually purposefully throw this election? It's exactly the type of thinking that got Trump elected in the first place, by simply coasting your campaign on the promise that the other guy is worse than you. But whether or not you agree with his policies and ideas, Glenn Youngkin honed his campaign on specific issues like mask mandates and critical race theory, and made an appeal to Virginia's parents who were rightfully frustrated with getting their kids back into a normal school schedule. McAuliffe, on the other hand, made headlines for being on the opposing side of parents. Whether or not that's true didn't matter. Meanwhile, the only thing his party is making headlines for is slowly dismantling their spending bill, specifically shaving off the parts designed to immediately help average Americans. Even if it wasn't already an expected pattern of these races flipping to the opposition party of whoever was just elected president, yeah, fucking of course he didn't win. And anyone who isn't a disingenuous liar can see that, right?
How much of this is a message just the Democratic Party that it's too far left? I mean, that if you're the Squad, or if you're, someone who's been calling for defund police, or socialism or democratic socialism.
I wonder. Wow. Yeah, Anderson Cooper. Good question. Is the loss for Terry McAuliffe, who before the election was sure to win because of his moderate message, a sign that progressives have turned people off of the Democratic Party? Hey, no. That's the answer to your question, but it's sure interesting that we're going to once again use this as a way to push out the far left and maintain the status quo of the moderate Democratic Party, even if it means losing a bunch more elections. The media is doing backflips to try and get this weird lie across. Even when they actually circle a real problem, they can't help but to inject this weird narrative that moderates losing means we should prop up more moderates.
Their voters feel looked down upon. And I'm not talking about Republican voters looking down, feeling that they're being looked down upon. I'm talking about moderate to conservative Democrats feeling that they're looked down upon by pundits, by progressives, by other people who say that, who if they express a feeling that maybe the schools should open even if the teachers don't want them to. Maybe teachers should listen to parents more often when it comes to what they're hearing. This is from a Virginian. Maybe Joe Manchin has a point when he says $1.5 trillion or $1.7 trillion is a lot of money. Let's take our time with it. Let's not rush it.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. The parents who've been slammed by a pandemic for the last few years and can't afford childcare and want to get their kids back into school, I'm sure the first thing on their minds every morning is whether or not the infrastructure bill designed to help them is going to cost the government too much money. So in a country where the people are out of work, dying from a pandemic, extremely divided, and faced with racial and economic inequality, the Democrats are continuing their "we've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas" approach. Instead of propping up radical or even somewhat progressive solutions, they're going to use the next 3 years to firmly plant themselves as the do-nothing establishment that a populist right-wing Trump type will easily stand up against. Though, to be fair and balanced, the next morning, Congress apparently flipped out about this and tried to put paid leave back in their bill. So maybe they learned their lesson for a fucking week. And so for the question of who of the people we've talked about will run, well, I guess just fucking pick one. They're all Trump variants, in both the Marvel Universe and coronavirus sense of the word. They all have a timeline where they could break through and easily harness voter support when the opposition is still spinning their wheels over this bizarre reluctance to accept drastic and progressive ideas that would actually help the American people. Or Trump will, just run and none of this matters, because that's probably what's going to happen. But hey, maybe I'm wrong, and the Democrats will find someone really good and savvy and competent and actually interested in fixing these problems to run in 2024. I shouldn't have looked that way. Shucks. Well, Trump DeSantis 2024, I guess. Huzzah. Sorry, this one was a bummer. Like all of them. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I need to go talk to Warmbo. Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching. I'm here with my emotional support puppet, and we're doing great. And we want to thank you for watching, and like and subscribe to the video if you can. And listen to the podcast version of this show. It's available. We also have another podcast called Even More News. We've got merch, and we've got a patreon.com/somemore-news. And we love you so much. And thank you again for all that you do. And he's not going to talk, but he'll be back. In ways you can't even imagine.